Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist. I have degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, and a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy. In this video, I'm not seeking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. Just say my hellos. Adric goes first, pinned his comment. Oh, it's very muggy here today, so my hair is a little wild. Okay. And Nina is here. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about attachment. So I brought that up last Sunday. This will be a bit of an open panel, although I know a lot of stuff's going on today, so we may not have too many on the panel. But after deciding that today was going to be about attachment and attachment theory, which is important for people to know, especially as they're navigating relationships, a video came up on TikTok that really kind of brought it home for me. And then somebody also sent it to me, and I was like, that's going to be on today. So, first, we want to talk about attachment theory, like where it comes from. So, this is John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth theory. If you remember the show that I did talk about attachment before. I showed the monkeys with the wire mother versus the cloth mother and those kind of things when we talked about attachment. If you don't remember, the attachment theory is about where a baby goes to seek comfort, right? So they did some kind of experiments, and back when you could use babies in experiments, terrible. And they removed the parents and then brought parents back in and watched what the children did to seek comfort, right? Did they run to their parents and want the holding and the picking up and the loving and the kissing and those kind of things to get comfort after being separated? Did they ignore their parents? Did they want to be picked up but then didn't want the affection? It was different styles of how they were attached to their parents. And then as time went on, what Bowlby and Ainsworth figured out was that how we navigated our attachment with our parents was also how we continued to navigate attachments throughout our lifetime. So this is where you hear things like an avoidant, he's avoidant. Now, we used to call that like commitment phobe. Now it's called an avoidant. Hi, Adrian. Thank you for being here. Hi, Prince Mugo. Thank you for being here. So we're going to talk about the different attachment styles. Then I'm going to play the video. And I want people to think about the answer to the question in the video. Okay, so let's put this up here. So these are, let me see if I can make it bigger. Nope, if I take myself off, you won't be able to hear me. Okay, so these are the attachment styles. Okay, so in the top corner, you have secure. So this is when you are bonding with someone or how you interact with family members that you're attached to in romantic relationships, those kind of things. So that's what we have to think about. So secure is confident. The relationship is reciprocal, like I'm there for you, you're there for me. It's not transactional. Okay. So nobody's keeping score. You just know I'm there for you. I know you're there for me. It's non-reactive, meaning that if you say something that I don't necessarily like, I'm not immediately gonna assume what you mean. Now, we all make assumptions, you know what I mean, or we mishear or we misinterpret things, but we're not expecting confrontation. We're not expecting things to go sideways or people to screw us over, right? And so we're not super reactive to what's going on. And our attachment is resilient. So even if we argue, even if we have a misunderstanding, even if we disagree on something, that attachment is resilient. It can stand the test of time. It can make it through these things, right? So this is secure. Now, when we have a secure attachment style, that's how we go into attachment. Like that's what we expect out of attachment. So the other corner is anxious or preoccupied. Okay, so an anxious attachment is where you have an emotional hunger, right? Like, I need to be filled up. I need you to make me feel secure. I need you to make me happy, right? I'm always kind of anxious about what's going on in our attachment. So you guys may have heard me talk about before limerence. They refer to it as fantasy bond here, but people with anxious attachment tend to be in love with the idea of love, right? This is my Mr. Right. She is my happily ever after, right? We're seeking someone who can fill some kind of void, and then it becomes like this fairy tale, right? And in the age of social media, everybody is selling their relationship as a fairy tale, but they are fairy tales, right? So they're calling it a fantasy bond. It's also called limerence. Um, there's a lack of nurturing in the anxious. Again, people are coming into it expecting on some level that it's either going to be this fairy tale. And if it's not the fairy tale, then it's terrible. It's awful. He's leaving me. She's cheating. It's that anxious thought process, right? And so with that in mind, if I am always concerned that he's going to leave me or he's cheating or he's mad at me, right? That happens a lot with anxious attachment. Are you mad at me? Right? You get that question a lot. You know, they may not like something you said, but it's not always that they're mad at you. But if you're always kind of in a bit of a protection mode, you're not seeking to give to the other person. And so there's not a lot of nurturing that goes back and forth. And it's a bit turbulent, right? Because there's not a lot of trust there. Are you cheating on me? Are we see that a lot. Are you mad at me? Or are you cheating on me? Both ways, right? Bottom corner is dismissive avoidant. Okay, so make this a little closer for me. Okay, dismissive avoidant has a lot to do with I just don't want it, right? Like this is where we get into attachments feel dangerous. And there's probably a reason for that. Remember, this is hearkening back to how our initial attachment figures attached with us, right? Like this created our attachment style. So dismissive avoidant, they don't want it, right? Because attachment is unsafe. So there's a lot of isolation. There's ambiguity, right? Like if you are in a relationship with somebody who's dismissive avoidant, everything is ambiguous. You don't know where you stand. There's not the big outpouring of emotions and the I love yous screaming from the top of the world and posting you up on social media, right? Like it's you can say, well, do you love me? And they answer with questions. Do you love me? Well, am I here? No, I'm just asking, do you love me? Did I buy you that gift yesterday? But do you love me? Do I beat you? It's that. Everything is ambiguous, right? They come across as pretty ambivalent towards their attachment figures. Like, they come across like they don't care, okay? Now again, the none of these are people who can't attach. Like, attachment is a prime drive in a human being. And it's not that the feelings aren't there. The feelings are there. They have feelings and they may feel very connected and bonded to someone, but attachment feels unsafe. Okay. So to keep that in mind. Um, so again, emotionally distant, you know, um, then they get blamed for not being emotionally intelligent. But just because they're not sharing their emotions with you doesn't mean that they don't have emotions and that they don't know what they are. Right? So the last one, fearful avoidant. Okay. So there's a lot of internal conflict that happens, right? Like if they're in a connection with someone, while dismissive is like it's unsafe, so I don't want it. Fearful is I already know that it's gonna be bad. So it's like that confirmation bias. Like I'm coming into the relationship knowing that attachments are bad. And since that's what I think, then everything the other person does or says is a conflict. It's a fight. Did you have a tone? What did you mean by that? It's conflictual and there's a lot of internal conflict that goes on. Like, why do I keep fighting with them? Why am I pushing them away? Why, when I want that, but I also just think it's gonna be bad, right? So it's dramatic, it's really unpredictable, and then you get the air of ambivalence, right? And I say the air of ambivalence because obviously the feelings are there, but they will pretend like or put off this very nonchalant behavior, right? Like, yeah, I don't care. It reminds me a lot of what you see on social media where people are like, um, somebody else tell a woman, let's say, you know, you're going to wind up alone. And then the woman's like, I don't care. Don't threaten me with a good time. I don't care. Men, same way. Men, you're never going to find that woman, that you want. And they're like, I don't care. What do I care? Right? But we are human beings. We are meant to attach to people. It's interesting because when people go through puberty, men, women, it doesn't matter. When human beings go through puberty, they start to experience loneliness. Like before puberty, never thought about it. Right. Like I have my friend, I have my mom, I have my dad, I have my, I don't think about loneliness or feeling alone. Right. But as soon as you start going through puberty and people are coupling up, all of a sudden we start experiencing loneliness. Now, sometimes it takes a while for it to kick in, but it starts around puberty where we start to feel this loneliness. And it's all because it's an internal drive to attach and bond and connect with other people. Hopefully that makes sense. Nina says, can I have 2 from box 3 and 4 from box 4? It's like the drive-through, right? Can I get a number 2? Hold this part, right? So, let me put in the link again. If anybody wants to come in, you can come in. But I wanted to talk about attachment because so much of some people say there's no such thing as a gender war, like there is no gender war, right? Some people refer to the gender war. What's interesting to me is I generally look at when there's like these battles going on. I try to look at who started it and what's the end game, right? Like, who benefits from men and women fussing at each other? Who benefits from that, right? And it's so funny right now because men and women across the board are all fussing with each other. And then the government comes in and says the birth rate is down. Well, we're fussing with each other right now, right? Like it's hard to be having babies when we're all fussing with each other. So, who benefits from men and women fussing with each other? Nobody really. I'm going to take some things off of here so that I can see if somebody comes in. Okay. So the next thing that I want to do is to play this video because, man, some of us it hits a little hard, right? But I want you guys to think about the answer to the question. Okay, then this is from TikTok, and there's some woman on the side watching it, but there was no link to go back to the original video, so don't pay attention to her. Listen to the video.
No, the most important question you can ask in therapy. Well, according to Professor Felicity de Zulueta at King's College London, the most important question you can ask, and I think she's absolutely correct, and which gets to the nitty-gritty, really gets to what's really the underlying core issue, is who did you go to for comfort as a child when you were upset? And this will tell you more than pretty much anything else you're looking for in those early days of your therapeutic.
Interesting, huh? So, we can talk about attachment theory and we can talk about, what it looks like. But the interesting thing is a lot of times when I'm talking attachment theory to people, they look at the symptomology and they're like, how am I right now? Right? Like Nina did that, can I get 2 from box 3 and 4 from box 4? You know what I mean? Like, we look at the symptomology and we're like, how am I attaching to people? We all want to say, we all want to go, no, I securely attach. Or some of us want to think that we're very pathological when we're not. Adric says the gender war transcended generations. Yeah. But think about the other wars that happen. Like there's this whole boomers hate millennials. I don't know. Some people come after Gen Z, some people don't. You know what I mean? Gen X kind of stayed out of it for a while. But now, since Gen X is getting a little bit older, they're getting some flack from Gen Z. So, you know what I mean? Gen X is kind of mad at the boomers. So there's always this, there's racial, there's gender, there's generations, there's always something that seems to be fomented in the everyday person, right? It's always fear mongering, right? Like, and the battle begins. So, oh, Adrian Hicks says Gen X hates everyone. Well, except for ourselves. And, that's still kind of flexible. Right? Like you could be kicked out. That's true. That's true. It's something about the hose water, I think. They really got us all. It made us a certain way where we're like, we do not care. Okay. So when we talk about attachment theory, people generally look at the symptomology and they're like, how am I now? And then, we might absorb it. We might internalize it, like I'm an anxious attacher, or I'm primarily secure, but I have these tendencies towards anxious attachment, or, I'm fearful avoidant. So, we say these things, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. We don't generally think about, okay, how was it in my childhood? How was my attachment to my attachment figures? And we always have to remember it's more than one parent, right? And babies attach to mother and father. If mother is not there, baby still has room for another attachment figure. Okay. If father is not there, baby has room for another attachment figure, right? So we have to think about our primary attachment figures as an infant, as a baby, was who? Who were the people? So for me, my father was in the military. So my father did not meet me until I was 6 months old. I formed an attachment with him after that, right? But primary attachments in infancy was my mother, and then more than likely was either my grandmother or my aunt. Now, it's probably my aunt, right? Because um, well, she's not that much older than me, she was a young teenager at that point in time, and I'm just thinking young teenage girls fall in love with little babies, you know what I mean? So I was probably carried around and shown off quite a bit, because my father was in the military, and so my primary attachments at that time, were to women. And then when my father came, my father and I ended up, we are very close. Throughout my childhood, we are very close. So we formed an attachment, right? But then you also have to think, if your attachment figures leave you right now, and I'm talking about from the baby's perspective, okay? Because a baby does not understand context and jobs and things like that. We only understand, small children only understand abandonment, right? So if you have an attachment figure pass away, that's abandoned. And I'm talking about the child's perspective, not, there's no blaming here. From the child's perspective, if somebody dies, that's abandonment. Even as adults, sometimes we feel that way a little bit, even though there's no blame. If somebody goes to jail, if somebody moves away, if, somebody just leaves, um, if, whatever the circumstance is, the baby sees that as abandonment and it affects attachment. So, and when I say baby, this is like through toddlerhood, right? But even after that, it will affect future attachment when things happen throughout childhood, right? So, if the abandonment, whatever that looked like, didn't happen until you were 8, 9, 10, it, you're still going to internalize abandonment. So, we start out wanting to be securely attached, right? And even if we do securely attach, things will affect it, okay, as we're going forward. If we have abandonment, we get a little more anxiously attached, right? If we continuously have abandonment, then we get really anxiously attached or may start to get like a fearful avoidant attachment. Okay. If there is child abuse, if there is neglect, if you're in an environment where things are not predictable and you end up getting hurt or you're scared a lot, then we may move into um, where the complete avoidant, right? Like the ambivalent avoidance. Just, I don't want it. It's not for me. I'm not having it. None of it. Okay. All right. Adrian Hicks says the hose water was contaminated. I mean, we all know there was lead in the water, right? Like we were all drinking leaded water. So we got a lot, right? Oh, Nina says she was so cute. That's my aunt, by the way. That's the aunt I'm talking about that was a primary attachment figure. And you know what that made me think of? She maintained being a primary attachment figure because she was a young teenager. Um, she babysat me a lot. And then I can remember time. Okay, we're adults now, Nina, so I'm going to tattle. Okay. Hopefully nobody gets mad. But every year on St. Patrick's Day, Auntie would come and sign me out of school. and take me downtown to watch the St. Patrick's Day parade. And then she would get me back to school before my parents came to pick me up. So there was we've always been a duo, Auntie and I. Okay. Hi, Dr. Tia-san. Thank you for being in here. He says, yeah, I saw my son take his mother's absence as abandonment. Yeah. Yeah. Because as children, all we know is that we've been abandoned, right? All the complexity, all the contextuals, children don't understand that all they know is that this person left me. This person who said they love me and they're supposed to protect me and take care of me and be there for me, left me. And we can even have feelings of abandonment when the parent didn't leave, right? Because sometimes we have a parent who could be on drugs, right? And so then or they drink too much alcohol. So they are not available to us. So they're sitting right there and I can see them, but I'm abandoned. Or they get a new boyfriend or a new girlfriend, and all the attention goes on the new guy or the new girl, and the kids get ignored, right? And so there's a feeling of abandonment, and that makes for feeling anxiously attached, right? Hi, Gregory Scotland. Thank you for being in here. Okay. Yeah, Nina was okay with me tattling on that one. Hi, Lawrence Rosh. Thanks for being in here. Oh, he says, I'm a boomer and a father was always gone working. Father was always gone working. He was a longshoreman. Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, for boomers, a lot of times the fathers were gone working, right? Like even like white collar jobs, which not everybody had, right? Like most jobs were labor jobs, right? Like just most jobs. Um, but even white collar jobs, like men were at the office generally until children went to bed, right? Um, but there was field work and being a longshoreman, being at the factory, or down at the plant, mining, all of these jobs that most men were in. Trucking, that's another one that pulled men from the home for extended periods of time. So even if your father lived in the home, he's off working 80 hours a week so that mom can be home with you. But then mom becomes this primary attachment figure and dad's there on the weekends. Now, I will tell you, generally, there's still an attachment with dad until or unless we start to question why dad's not there. Okay. And I mean it in this way. If mom's not treating me well, then I notice dad's absence more, right? Or if things are happening with the siblings, or mom's not able to keep the house under control, and I'm not blaming everything on mom. All of this stuff can go back the other way. I'm just giving examples, especially during this period of time that I'm talking about. Silent generation, right, was off doing all of this work and may be gone for long periods of time or would have to be away from the house for long periods of time. We still will feel, right? Think about resilience, right? Like we still will have a secure attachment to dad because the resilience is there until I'm unsafe with his absence. Hopefully that makes sense. I will notice his absence when I become unsafe or bad things start to happen where I want my dad. If bad things start to happen and I want my dad and he is unavailable to me for long periods of time, then again, children take everything personal. I may start to feel a bit abandoned by him. But if mom's holding it down and dad's picture is on the wall, and I know he's going to be here on the weekend, and mom speaks highly of dad, and I'm good and I'm safe. And when something bad happens, mom takes care of it. Maybe she gets dad on the phone, they talk me through it. Although I'm not noticing his absence, right? It's a lot of what like military parents will do both ways, right? Is that um, when the other parent has to be gone for extended periods of time, what we teach people is have the pictures of mom or dad, whoever is missing, right, up on the wall. Talk about them often. Tell stories about it. Now we have things like video where we can show videos, we can FaceTime, we can get people on the phone. We're not noticing the absence of the parent, right? And so it's not affecting us detrimentally. If we're securely attached, our attachment is resilient to absences. We don't feel abandoned. Hopefully that makes sense. Hi, Cutting Up with the Joneses. Thank you for being in here. Okay, Adrian Hicks says, is it possible that your attachment style can be fluid and somewhat dependent on stimuli that you get from the individual that you're attempting to attach to? Yes. It's not completely fluid. Okay, it's not completely, but yes, it can be somewhat fluid and it can depend on the person that you're attempting to attach to. So let's say someone has been going through healing work, right? Like they're doing all their self-help stuff, they're learning things, they're being introspective, they're learning, and they're like, oof, I have a bit of a fearful avoidant style because all right, well, let's blame mom this time because we blame dad for being gone at work all the time. Okay. I have this fearful avoidant style where I'm a bit more conflictual. I'm not as stable because of the unpredictability of mom, right? So she was up, she was down, she was in, she was out. When she was mad, everybody was bruised and bloody, but when she was great, she was great. And so going into attachments, I always feel like I'm walking on eggshells and I'm just waiting for the fight to happen. So sometimes I'm just going to start the fight to get the fight out of the way because the fight's going to happen. And then we can get back to, the hugging and loving on each other and kissing and all that kind of stuff. But I just constantly feel like a fight is brewing. So I'm working on that. I'm getting my anxiety down. I'm getting my fearfulness down. I'm working on trust. I'm, doing all these things so I can have a healthy attachment for the first time. And I know triggering is the buzzword, but it's actually a psychological word first before it became a buzzword. But we can be triggered into that old attachment style, right? So we can be working towards secure attachment, right? But then the person we're attaching to says something that mother used to say or behaves in a way that mother used to behave, acts in some sort of way, looks like her in the right light, um, starts a fight, right? That puts us back into that mindset, right? And it's kind of like I talked about on Shadow Work Wednesday when we're, integrating with other people and we're trying to have relationships with other people. The other thing you have to keep in mind is the other person's attachment style is going to affect yours, right? So if you're trying to come in and have a healthy and a secure attachment, and the person you're trying to attach to is an ambivalent avoidant, your attempts to try to have secure attachment with somebody who's coming at a relationship at a place of fear and anger is going to put you right back into your fearful avoidant, right? But it's going to trigger you back into that. This is what I say to people a lot of times. How we were raised how we were taught at school, the people that we were around, the things that our parents taught us, what we heard, if you went to church, what you heard at church, all of those things hand us a script of life. It says, this is what life is. Here's your script. Okay. Then when we get into adulthood, we're reading from the script, right? And so generally, who we attract and who we are attractive to read from a very similar script, right? This is why they say similar like finds like, okay? When we start to realize that that script was maybe written for somebody else, it doesn't really apply to me. Um, that script is kind of unhealthy. I don't really believe the premise behind that script. That script leads to a bad place. The difficulty is that we inherently and kind of unconsciously or subconsciously want to continue to read from that script. It's comfortable. We know how it works, right? If we're raised in an environment where mother and father were constantly yelling at each other, and everywhere I went, everybody's parents were fighting or talking crappy to each other, then that's the script we go into adulthood reading from. But we see different things, right? Like we're exposed to more. So we start seeing other couples where they don't treat each other like crap. They don't talk nasty to each other. They don't fight all the time. But what's comfortable to us is arguing. What's uncomfortable is we never fight. Where's the fight? Where's the yelling and screaming? Where you're going to call me this name and then I'm going to call you this name and then you're going to, put me down but kind of make it a joke and then I'm going to laugh about it and say, you're silly and we move on. That's what I'm comfortable with. So if anybody's sort of living in the attachment style that we were raised with, we know that script. So it's going to feel comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable to try to do things in a like healthy way. Hopefully that makes sense. Gregory Scotland says, yet many boomer women said that the men left the family. Well, in some ways, think about it this way. And it's not okay to tell children your father left you. Like, that's terrible. It's really terrible, guys. It's really, really terrible. Kids will figure out what happened later, when they get older. But when you tell a child, hey, the person who is half of your DNA is this and that and the third, and he didn't want you and he left and he's, he didn't want to be around and he went and did this and he went to that. You are creating so much insecurity and so many feelings of abandonment. No matter what happened in your relationship with the other parent, that should and does have nothing to do with their parental relationship with the child. You can't make the child carry the issues in your relationship. It's hard. I'm going to say it's hard, right? But it's tough. That is tough. And of course, parents are human beings too, and they're not going to tell the kids both sides of the story. They never do, right? What we see a lot of times in like family court and divorce court is that both parents are arguing with each other through the child. Those poor kids. That's terrible, right? Like kids will figure it out. If you fly, if you truly think the person who broke up with you or left the family is a complete a-hole, your kids maintaining a relationship with that person means that they will eventually figure that out. They are an a-hole, right? But that's between them, not you. As long as there's no abuse happening, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not advocating for that, but also don't make up abuse just because you're mad at the other person. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. Okay. So, hopefully, all that makes sense. Like, we're only 40 minutes in. I left space for people to come up if they wanted to. You guys don't have to, especially because since all of this has its roots in childhood, sometimes people don't wanna share, right? Like, what childhood was like. Um, but something that I wanna throw out there, okay? Because I did mention genders, but I wanna throw this out there, okay? Um, we think so many times that men are, emotionally unintelligent or just don't feel their emotions as strongly as women, um, or are more ambivalent or more nonchalant, um, or that they just go at things like super logical, like the Borg or whatever. Star Trek reference you want to insert there. I want us to be really careful with that because something I've said before, and I'll continue to say again, is that we don't teach our little boys to, we don't teach them the language of emotion. Okay. Just because you don't have the language of emotion doesn't mean you feel emotion any differently at all. All human beings feel emotion the same way, especially as children, right? Especially. Now, men do tend to, when they've been through a lot, go more towards the ambivalent avoidant, and women go more towards the fearful avoidant when they've been through a whole lot. Um, but it doesn't mean they don't feel any differently or that they don't feel abandoned or that when trauma happens or when people are abusive to them or when they are psychologically manipulated that they can just take it because they're boys and they're strong and they no, they're children. Children are children, right? And men are also humans. I don't know if that's a spoiler alert to people, but men have human emotion. Now, as small children, they may not have been taught the language of emotion. And there's also, men have socially sanctioned emotions. You're either allowed to be okay, or nonchalant, ambivalent, or angry, right? The good thing is that the tides are turning a little bit. I see fathers teaching their sons more about emotions. Women being a bit more fair about that all children feel these emotions and everybody gets to know the language of emotion. So I want to keep that in mind when we talk about attachment because I will hear things about how what was the last day, like that men are very transactional, they don't marry for love, they only marry for like what a woman can do for him or like a status symbol or things like that. And what I hear when I hear those things is the ambivalent avoidant, right? Because we're taking emotion completely out of it. Or I've heard before, men don't have the ability to love. Men don't love. So don't get in a relationship with a man expecting him to love you. He has to serve you. Now, that sounds like that fearful avoidant, right? Like I need to put this man into submission because he doesn't have any feelings for me. So I just wanted to throw that out there that when we talk about these different attachment styles, this applies to all people of the human persuasion. This goes for everybody, right? So, however, much like love languages, it's only really going to give you information. Every attachment and connection that you have with another human being, you set the parameters and you figure it out. So, if you go into it saying, you know what, I want to have a healthy relationship with this person. So, What does secure attachment look like? What does a healthy relationship look like? What does good communication look like? And what am I afraid to say or do? What am I avoiding saying or doing for fear of conflict, right? As an example, I've told you guys before, I am pretty conflict avoidant. And there are reasons for that, right? Like I grant myself grace. There are reasons for that. So I feel conflict avoidant. Now, do I, if a conflict is necessary, do I ignore it? No. It's going to take me a while to see that a conflict is necessary, you know, but I will conflict if it's necessary. If I feel like it's not necessary, I'm not going to do it. Okay. Hi, Leon. Thanks for being in here. Okay. Lawrence Ross. Hi. Thanks for being in here. Says, sounds like Klingon love. A girl stabbed me with a pencil in school because she liked me. And you know what's interesting about that? It makes me think of what I always heard was the little boys pull your hair because they have a crush on you. The little boys pick on you because they have a crush on you. Little boys, trip you and tease you and make fun of you because they have a crush on you. And so if you're hearing it the other way, right? Like, that the girls hit you or stab you with a pencil or tease you or make fun of you or whatever because they have a crush on you. What does that teach you about attachment? That attachment is dangerous, that the opposite sex is going to hurt you, which also means then if you want to attach to the opposite sex, then you go into it expecting to be harmed or that this relationship is not healthy. Okay, Adric says 7 of 9. He got my Borg reference. And 7 of 9. Oh yeah, I'm remembering her now. Actually, it's coming back. Okay, Leon says, a good relationship is being okay being bored. Yeah, I mean, it's stability is boring. Think about that. To a lot of people who are used to reading from the script of conflict and unpredictability, stability is boring, right? Like I see a lot of people or have seen people in my practice where they want to have a healthy relationship, right? So they're trying to figure out how to put themselves out there and to whom. And what they will find is that the other people are boring. Right? Like this person is boring. This woman is boring. This man is boring, right? That's stability. What we miss in stability is the high highs, right? The high highs of love bombing, making up from conflict, making up for poor behavior, blah, blah, blah. The high highs come after the low lows. You got to get the low lows to get the high highs. And so as we're moving into needing and wanting to have stable relationships, it's a trade-off. You are not going to get the high highs, but you're not going to get the low lows either. And if you want to get rid of the low lows, the other side of that is you get rid of the high highs. They are a team. They come together. That is a package deal. It's a roller coaster, right? So, you think about when you go to the fair, you go to the carnival, right? We're not looking for the roller coaster anymore, the twists and turns and crazy, and we're up and we're down and we don't know what's going on. We're on the little kids choo-choo train, just kind of slow going, making it through the carnival. We can see where we're going. It's a trade-off, right? So you're right. If you don't crave lazy days, just being okay, then you're reading from a different script. And so then you have to look at your script, right? If you want stability, if you want consistency, you have to be ready to give up the high highs. Okay, Leon says, I am more than enough wild for my woman, and she keeps me on my feet every time I raise my voice about putting dishes in the dishwasher. Damn, woman, you're going to start washing them by hand. Yeah. I mean, you work out the relationship, like what you want the relationship to look like, right? And in some ways, when you're trying to have a healthy relationship, you have to look at what are you avoiding? What are you fearful of? And what makes you feel conflictual? So then you know how these are the things that are going to get me to secure attachment. Okay. Hi, California Ant Keeper. Thanks for being in here. And they say, but the high highs are so amazing. LOL. Yeah, that's the thing. And you do have to grieve the loss of that, right? Like, let's say you love flowers, okay? And you love it when your man gets you flowers. Okay. But the only time he gets you flowers is to say he's sorry for some nasty shit that he did. Some really conflictual. Like he starts fights, right? Like he's a yeller. He starts fights. And the only time you get flowers is to say I'm sorry about the fight. Then stability means you're never getting flowers. You just don't get flowers anymore. Buy your own flowers. It doesn't feel the same. You like when your man gets you flowers. Maybe he sends them to you at work and you like that. But stability means no more flowers. And you have to be okay with that. If you want stability, if you want consistency, you have to give up the high highs to get rid of the low lows. Okay. Are you still going to have some highs and lows? Of course, we're human beings. You're still going to argue and disagree sometimes, have differences of opinions. But it may mean you're not getting flowers. You're just getting a, oh, hey, I was wrong about that. Oh, yeah, really? And then it's just a conversation. Or you come back and go, you know what? I thought about it and you're actually right about that. I totally was not looking at it from that perspective. And then they're like, oh, yeah, and you just have a conversation. It's over. Right. Hi, Rael. Thanks for being in here. So, that's always the tough part too, is that those avoidants are protecting themselves from the low lows, and then they don't get to enjoy the high highs, and there's no stability. Like it's just not a comfortable place to be. And so you can see why people would just avoid it, or they would just assume every attachment and every relationship is terrible, because experience tells them so. So when you're thinking about yourself, you're trying to figure out how you attach. Think about your childhood. Who were your attachment figures? How attached were you? Are you still attached to them? What were those attachment styles? Then as you grew up, what bonds did you form? Who were you attached to? Are you still attached to them? And because humans are humans, who has abandoned you over time, right? Be that from they had to move away, they left you, they passed away, whatever it was, who has abandoned you, and how has that affected your attachment style? And sometimes it does play into gender a little bit, right? Like if you have this feeling that your mother abandoned you, then how you attach to women's going to be affected. How did you attach, or if you feel like your father abandoned you, then how you attach to men is going to be affected. If you answer that TikTok question, like as a child, who did you go to for comfort? When you skinned your knee or you had a bad day or somebody hurt your feelings, whatever, who did you go to for comfort? That's going to tell you who you feel more bonded with as you got older. If you find that you went to no one, you isolated when you needed comfort and you comforted yourself, then that's going to tell you how quote unquote vulnerable, right? Like you can be for other people because you're not seeking them out for attachment. You take care of yourself. When something bad is happening, I'll take care of it. When I'm feeling away, I will take care of it. When I'm sad, mad, glad, something terrible's going on, something needs to be fixed, I will do it, right? These people tend not to want to ask for help, anything big, bad, whatever, I will take care of it. And then you will see me when everything's fine. It's a protection mechanism. All right. We are just about at the hour mark. So I'm going to let you all get back to your Sunday. This is my house cleaning and laundry day. Ew. So I'm going to get after that. I hope everybody enjoyed the rest of your Sunday. This coming Wednesday, we're going to be talking about, I just put it in. It's totally slipped my mind. Projection is injection, right? Like what we project is what we absorb, those kind of things. So we're going to talk about that, about projection. And I'm pretty excited about that, actually, now that I remember. And then next Sunday, it's going to be called F-U-C-K, yourself. And we're going to be talking about self-sabotage. Oh, Rael wants to come up. Yes, Rael. And I don't know. I put the link up pretty early in the chat. So yes, definitely come up. Tell us an aspect that we haven't talked about. I would love that. So while Rael comes up, let me take some things down here. There we go. Okay, so we'll wait for Rael to come up. But if you guys remember last Sunday, I invited Rael to be able to come and talk about attachment. He was saying that he talks about attachment styles and stuff like that in the online spaces or space that he is in. So it would be interesting for him to be able to share that. And then if you guys have, questions, it's always good to have a male perspective too, right? Like, because as I'm explaining this, this is going to come from a woman's perspective. Now, educated perspective, but still a woman's perspective. Give me time to drink water. There he is. Okay. Adding Rael in. And you are muted, Rael.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Take it away. I'm just gonna put myself over to the side while you take it away.
Can you hear me good though?
Yeah, I can hear you really well.
All right. Thanks for having me up. I had looked on your channel and you said look on your channel for your email, but I didn't see it, so that's why I didn't contact you. But there was an aspect that I've been reading about. I have read about in this particular book called Attached. The new science of adult attachment and how it can help you find and keep love, by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. And one of the aspects of it was this thing called the dependency paradox. And I really found this particular aspect fascinating because one of the things that you see in a lot of personal relationships out here, especially when you talk about it in the context of attachment styles, is the fear of being vulnerable. You see it on, I think, both sides. And it's interesting because I don't know if this was even covered earlier, but it's this thing in this book called the dependency paradox. And I thought this was pretty fascinating because it really shows how dependent we truly are on each other in terms of the opposite genders. And so it was just something in here that I just really wanted to read because I think that it really it really hits kind of really at the heart of the matter, because what we're really talking about is attachment really in terms of the relationship standpoint. And so this really to me just stood out to me. So I'm just going to read this particular aspect from this book. It said, well before brain imaging technology was developed, John Bowlby understood that our need for someone to share our lives with is part of our genetic makeup and has nothing to do with how much we love ourselves or how fulfilled we feel on our own. He discovered that once we choose someone special, powerful and often uncontrollable forces come into play. New patterns of behavior kick in regardless of how independent we are and despite our conscious wills. Once we choose a partner, there is no question about whether dependency exists or not. It always does. An elegant coexistence that does not include uncomfortable feelings of vulnerability and fear of loss sounds good, but is not our biology. What proved through evolution to have a strong survival advantage is a human couple becoming one physiological unit, which means that if she's reacting, then I'm reacting, or if he's upset, that also makes me unsettled. He or she is part of me, and I will do anything to save him or her. Having such a vested interest in the well being of another person translates into a very important survival advantage for both parties. Despite variations in the way people with different attachment styles learn to deal with these powerful forces, the secure and anxious types embrace them, and the avoidants tend to suppress them. All three attachment styles are programmed to connect with a special someone. Does this mean that in order to be in a happy relationship, we need to be joined with our partner at the hip or give up other aspects of our life, such as our careers or friends? Paradoxically, the opposite is true. It turns out that the ability to step into the world on our own often stems from the knowledge that there is someone besides us whom we can count on. And this is the dependency paradox. The logic of this paradox is hard to follow at first. How can we act more independent by being thoroughly dependent on someone else? If we had to describe the basic premise of adult attachment in a single sentence, it would be: if you want to take the road to independence and happiness, first find the right person to depend on and travel down it with them. Once you understand this, you've grasped the essence of attachment theory. To illustrate this principle, let's take another look at childhood, where attachment starts. Nothing better demonstrates the idea we're conveying than what is known in the field as the strange situation test. I'll skip that part. Let me get to the part that I want to really get to. It was this part that I really want to get to. Okay, here we go, right here. Finding the right person to depend on. It said the question is, what happens when the person we rely on most and in fact depend on emotionally and physically doesn't fulfill his or her attachment role? After all, our brain assigns our partner the task of being our secure base, the person we use as an emotional anchor and a safe haven, the one we turn to in time of need. We are programmed to seek their emotional availability. But what if they aren't consistently available? In the Cone MRI experiment, we saw that physical contact with a spouse can help reduce anxiety in a stressful situation. And we learned that those who reported the highest satisfaction levels in their relationship benefited most from spousal support. Other experiments have produced even more far-reaching results. Brian Baker, a psychiatrist and researcher at the University of Toronto, studies psychiatric aspects of heart disease and hypertension, and in particular, the way in which marital discord and job strain affect blood pressure. In one of his studies, Dr. Baker found that if you have a mild form of high blood pressure, being in a satisfying marriage is good for you. Spending time in the presence of your partner actually benefits you by lowering your blood pressure to healthier levels. If, on the other hand, you are not satisfied with your marriage, contact with your partner will actually raise your blood pressure, which will remain elevated as long as you are in physical proximity. The implications of the study are profound. When our partner is unable to meet our basic attachment needs, we experience a chronic sense of disquiet and tension that leaves us more exposed to various ailments. Not only is our emotional well-being sacrificed when we are in a romantic partnership with someone who doesn't provide a secure base, but so is our physical health. It seems then that our partners powerfully affect our ability to thrive in the world. There is no way around that. Not only do they influence how we feel about ourselves, but also the degree to which we believe in ourselves and whether we will attempt to achieve our hopes and dreams. Having a partner who fulfills our attachment needs and feels comfortable acting as a secure base and safe haven can help us remain emotionally and physically healthier and live longer. Having a partner who is inconsistently available or supportive can be a truly demoralizing and debilitating experience that can literally stunt our growth and stymie our health. So I really thought that this was really important to really understand, because there's a conversation that happens in our particular group as Black people, and it's an argument about 50-50. And it has really picked up a lot of steam in the last, I would say, probably about 5 years. And it's this notion that if men don't pay all of the bills, then the women look at the men as being inadequate in terms of provider roles. And what this is really kind of showing is that this is what I say. The man is not the center and the woman is not the center. To me, the family unit is the center. So if you put the family unit at the center, then you do what it takes to make sure the family is whole and complete. So it doesn't matter what you put in on a bill. If you put 10% on it, you're contributing to the whole health of the family and who is actually benefiting from the work that you put in. And so to me, it's interesting that the dependency paradox shows that it does not make us lesser than to need someone. In fact, that our need for someone is based on based on our experience as a child of being able to have that confidence to go out into the world and accomplish the things that we do. Because ultimately, I don't care if you go to school, whether you're a man or woman for a degree, ultimately, we're going to get married, we're going to have families. So ultimately, it's for the benefit of the family. So if the family is the center, then there should be no talk about who is doing the most, who is doing the least. It's one thing if somebody is actually just really not really trying to contribute to the actual unit. But if both parties are actually contributing, there should be no fight about who's doing what, because ultimately the family is the center and should benefit from the work that you're putting in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a few things that I want to say. Thank you for, first of all, really hitting on what secure attachment looks like, because my primary focus was on some of the other attachment styles, right, that are not secure. So, like Rael said, secure attachment is having home base, right? Like if this person is like home, right? So you feel comfortable knowing you can come and go, right? Like I can spend time with friends and I can come back and there nothing negative will happen from that. I can be gone to work and come home, and I can go play sports and come home. Like that's that feeling of security. And you become, knowing that you have that home base, you become more curious and more adventurous and more, because you have home base, because that's how you know that it's secure, is because you can move around and be independent and do things that you like to do, and there's no repercussions from that, right? There's no, where are you, how long have you been, who are you talking to? That's the anxious attachment that will respond like that. The other thing that I wanted to add is, you were talking about health benefits of being in a secure relationship. Also, suicide statistics will show that the more relationship discord there is, the higher suicide rates go. In fact, for men, that is the number one issue that was reported for completed suicide, was that there
Wow.
was discord in the relationship. So, that does hit on the benefits, right? So the benefit is that it helps with anxiety, but it also helps with depression, right? But it also kind of, when you look at the opposite and you're talking about the dependency paradox, the opposite of that is codependency, right? And
Yes.
that is more transactional. So a
Yes.
lot of what we're seeing in the 50-50 ask,
Hmm.
the transactional relationships that are not reciprocal, they are transactional.
Yes.
What people are actually asking for is codependency, right?
Mm.
Like mutually assured destruction is
Yes.
the way I look at it, right? Like you're
Emotionally.
paying half and I'm paying half, because if you don't pay half, I'm not paying half, and we'll both go down.
Yep.
That's fine. We'll both crash and burn. You
Yes.
know, if I cook, you're cleaning, and if I clean, you're cooking, because you know, you're going to need me as much as I need you. You're going to make me need you. You're going to need me just as much. We are mutually assured destruction here, because that's what codependency is, right? Like I need you to be unhealthy in some way, or not good enough in some way. Like I'm better looking than you, or I'm smarter than you, or I make more money than you, because the only way that I feel needed is for you to need me.
Hmm.
That's codependency, right? So we're, in our attempt, men and women alike, to raise our standards, that was what we moved towards, is like, okay, well, this version of codependency that I want is mutually assured destruction. You're
Hmm.
going to give half and I'm going to give half. And if we go down, I guess it's both of our faults, you know? So that was kind of what I was thinking. Whereas someone in a secure attachment is going to look at resiliency and reciprocity, and more like, I'm only as healthy as my person, right? So, for me, like I'm only as healthy as my man, because we are a unit, kind of like you were talking about the family, right? So even people, who maybe don't have kids or whatever, it's still a unit. And we do have to think about, even when we put the family in the center, kids are only part of that unit temporarily, right?
Yes.
We don't have children to stay with us forever. So the unit starts out and always has to remain and will be the husband wife duo, right? Like the couple
Correct.
is the unit. So if we view the unit as, I'm only as healthy as my man or my woman, my husband, my wife,
Mm.
then you don't look at transactional, right? And the example that I give is, society dictates that men are supposed to pay for dinner, right? And while we may not care, You know, you may not care who pays for dinner, especially if you're a married couple, like it's coming out of the same pot. Who cares who throws the card down? We are going to, as a woman, let's say, a woman who is in a secure attachment will go into that situation knowing that society and everybody's looking to see if he pays for the meal. Well, what if he forgot his card? Now, a 50-50 woman will, when the wait staff comes to the table, a 50-50 woman, a transactional, the one who is asking for, making bids and offers for codependency, will be like, no, I'll take the check. And then she'll put her card down and she'll give it back to the wait staff, right? That is transactional. Okay. And she may say, no, you paid for dinner last time. I will pay for dinner this time, right? Everybody sees it. Okay. Somebody in a secure attachment who is like, you know, I'm only as healthy as my person, would slide their card to the man, hand it to him under the table, hand him a fistful of cash, because she knows it's coming out of the same pot. She knows that he's got it every other time, or he had it last time, and it can come out of my pot of money this time. I mean, but he needs to be able to have his head high. He needs to be viewed, you know, in an appropriate way. And because I am, you know, if I am in secure attachment and I am more about resilience, and that you and I need to both be healthy, I don't need to make a show of throwing down my card. I don't need to be telling the wait staff, oh, you know, or telling him you got it last time in front of the waiter. Like that, it's wholly unnecessary, right?
Well, yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was reading a book. I think I can't forget her first. I can't remember her first name. Woodman. She talked about how that when the drive is for power, love can't exist, and so that's what you're really talking about. You're really talking about power, and so obviously, it's on both. I like to say that masculinity is no more important than femininity, and femininity is no more important than masculinity. Both are equally
Absolutely.
valuable. They have a purpose, and so because both of them are equal in value, um, um, in terms of the psychological aspects of things, yeah, man is no more important than woman, and woman is no more important than man in terms of the realms of psychological development. Uh,
Mhm.
you start talking about the roles in society. Obviously, men's role in society is a big lion's share of what society actually needs to function, in terms of structure, in terms of infrastructure and things of that nature. So men do take much more of a prominent role in the development of society. It doesn't mean that women's role is not of equal value. It just means that if the women are going to nest, there has to be men that create an environment where nesting can take place. So, and I think that in this particular era of time, the more women have become quote unquote empowered, um, they have misconstrued what roles mean in actually a unit function. Um, I mean, we would look at a man, well, many of us will look at a man who walks around touting his degree in front, like in his woman's face, like, I'm better than you. I got a degree from Harvard. You're beneath me. We would look at him and be like, man, what is wrong with you? You know, like, well,
Right.
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like, why would you use your accolades and credentials to beat up on somebody you love? Well, it's the same way if a woman does it.
Mhm.
It's Not it, because again, the family unit should be the center. So what you do, whatever it takes for your family to thrive. And
Yeah.
so, but when your goal is power instead of love, then your accolades and you're counting the beans and you're saying like, well, what I did this, and you're keeping a log of the transactions that you perform, because everything you do is transactional. Uh,
Right.
it's not based on truly loving this particular person. And so that's why I really like this dependency paradox, because what they do talk about is the difference between the dependency paradox and codependency. So they talk about both of them and show the difference between codependency and actually the dependency paradox, in terms of actually having that significant other provide to you a basic physiological component of helping you develop even from the adult perspective, because I don't think learning ends when you finish high school and college. Learning is a lifelong endeavor. So if the person is helping you grow in your learning and your maturity, they're providing a vital component, to your overall development, especially from a psychic standpoint as well, and health wise. So it was very, very interesting when I first read that, like happy, spouses, like that, when they have a spouse that really contributes to their well being, can actually lower their blood pressure. Like you get that locked in to each other. And so it just really shows the power of how the biological aspect of human nature contributes to the psychic development of it as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it makes me think about, we've moved into this time where um, women will say, and I'm going to talk about men too, but women will say, I've got a degree. I make six figures. I bought my car. I bought my house. I have money in the bank. I don't need a man. I want a man. Okay. Or men who will say, I can hire a maid. I can hire a cook. I can hire a nanny if I need to. I can hire a prostitute if I need to. You know, I can hire all these people. I don't need a woman. I want a woman, right? So we're coming at each other from that transactional standpoint. So there were studies that were done about instinctually what do people find attractive. Okay, so for men, what they instinctually find attractive in a woman are things that denote femininity. So one is the waist to hip ratio, so smaller waist, wider hips,
Right.
um, things like fuller lips, the whites of eyes being whiter.
Bambi eyes.
Yeah. It was specific things that denote fertility, which
Hmm.
we conflate with age, but it's because when we are the most fertile, we're young, right? Like, so women are young, right? Now, for women, what they found most attractive was resources, nothing physical. There was no physical characteristic that women in a statistically significant way found attractive in a man.
Hmm.
Okay. It was resources. So you think about it, when you're the male bird and you're trying to get the female bird to notice you, you're going to bring big sticks or big pieces of fuzz, or right, like, to build the nest.
Yes.
Okay. So that is it. And it's either resources or the potential towards resources. Okay. So when we go back to, we're coming at relationships transactionally, um we if a woman tells a man, I've already covered everything that man does,
Mhm.
then even a man who is not, so we'll say a man who is not transactional, okay? He's coming into it like I want to find my person, I want to create a stable base, you know, I'm going at this in a true like love partnership relationship way, right? Like I want to find my woman, right? And he's met with, I already take care of the man role. Then his next thought is going to be, well, then do I need to take the woman's role? Like, are you asking me to take the woman's role? Or what purpose do I serve? And I say this because we also instinctually know what the opposite sex wants, right? Like men instinctually have always tried to show their resources or their access to resources because they instinctually know that's what women like, right? Like, look at my house, look at my car, look at my bank account, look at my nice suit, look at, I have the ability, if need be, or I'm trying to get to the ability to provide you with resources. I'm trying to give you things that you can multiply. I want to give you a house, you can make it a home. I want to give you seed and you can make children. I want to give you ingredients and you make a meal, right? Like I want to give you the resources. Women also know men are attracted to fertility. That's why we wear makeup and we do stuff to our hair and, try to make sure our waists are small and our hips are good. You know what I mean? Like we just know what we find attractive, but we're so backwards right now. And it's not that I'm necessarily advocating for like 1950s marriage roles, because every couple figures out how they want their relationship to look. But all the arguments and everything that's going on right now, all of it shows that everybody's coming at this transactionally, and the, the squeakiest wheels are the people who are insecurely attached. Because
Yes.
people who are securely attached
Yes.
think all of these arguments are bogus.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Now, Lavers had a question though, and thank you, Lavers, for coming in. And Leon, I was reading through there, and I'm so glad you put at the end that you were joking. So I was like, what? But Lavers says, do you think it's possible for people to forget how to love? What I think happens to people, and unfortunately, this happens to men more than it does women, but it does happen to women. I think what happens sometimes is that we become so avoidant, so fearful, or I'm sorry, so ambivalent in our avoidance that we just feel like we don't know how to love anymore. Like that ambivalence causes a numbing effect, right? Like you can look at somebody and be like, I feel like I have feelings for you, or I feel like I should have feelings for you, but it's numbed, right? All human beings can love. All human beings can feel every emotion. But sometimes, be it physically, mentally, or emotionally, it's kind of beat out of us. And to continue to live, and not go towards that, the depression side of this, we compartmentalize all the pain, we put it in boxes, we pack it away, and we become numb. And
Emotional
yeah,
atrophy.
emotionally numb, so that the bad stuff doesn't hurt us,
Mhm.
right? Again, it's the same as the roller coaster, but the opposite way. Because we don't want the bad stuff to hurt us, now we can't feel the good stuff. So, Lavers, I guess what I'm saying is that you don't forget. You don't forget. You can become numb, but
Mhm.
that means, you can also make it better. You can also get better. You can also do, if you want it to. there are things that you can do to kind of start to peel away, maybe start opening some of those boxes and dealing with some of the pain that other people have inflicted on you, and processing through that and getting through those things that made you numb, and you'll get back to the spot where you can love again, for sure.
Yeah, um, from a layman's perspective, I mean, you're the expert here, but um, when you have the more just the avoidant or um, anxious, like to when you haven't felt it and you actually feel it, it can be very scary. you know it can be such a bewildering experience.
Mhm.
Um and we have to say this on both sides. I mean, there are people who come from families that never felt love at all.
Mhm. People who have never been hugged, never
And
told, "I love you."
I mean,
Yeah.
you have to really take that into consideration um, when you're, out here, interacting with people. Um, I've said this before. Like there was in the '90s, there was this thing about people going postal. It was kind of people kind of joked about it. People going postal and workplace violence that was happening between
Mhm.
employees. And I used to say even back then, like, hey man, y'all better be careful how y'all treat people, man, because let's say somebody does go postal where you work, like those people tend to specifically pick out certain people that was harming them on jobs.
Mhm.
And if you treated people with kindness, they'll just walk right past you because you're not their target.
Mhm.
Um, because you never know you know where somebody is coming from. Somebody could have lost a parent, and that parent, could have never felt love, and they just lose it. It could just
Mhm.
snap, and here you on a job, being a butthole, and then you set them off. So a lot of this,
Rael, this happens online too,
yes,
where
absolutely.
people attack each other, go after each other. People are looking for the gotcha moments, and it seems, especially in this particular time,
Mhm.
for a multitude of reasons, everybody is well, not everybody, most people, and again, I talk about, just the common folks, right? Like all of us. Um, everybody's hurting and everybody's struggling,
Yes, yes, I would agree. Yeah.
and we're all taking it out on each other.
So I've called it, I dubbed it years ago, the emotional food fight,
Yeah.
where in a food fight, nobody wins because everybody comes out looking messy.
Mhm.
And so that's what you see. And I've done a lot of reading on this narcissist stuff, and um, it's a book by Cheryl McBride that I really think is really one of the best books I've read on this, called "Will I Ever Be Good Enough? Will I ever be good enough? Healing the daughters of narcissistic mothers."
Mhm.
And it can really be um, transposed for males to a certain degree. Um,
Mhm.
this lack of mothering aspect is really, um, really bigger than a lot of people really understand. Um,
Mhm.
and so when you, because because there's a myth of motherhood, the notion that just because your mother gave birth to you, means she automatically loves you is so untrue. Um,
Or
and
that she even knows what to do.
right,
Like
exactly.
the assumption that all women are nurturing and they
Yes.
know what to do and they're great with kids
No.
and are all trustworthy, you
No.
know, that still persists to this day. And it's like, no, if you look at numbers for physical abuse of children, it's women,
Yes.
not men.
Yes. I was I was reading this book about the emotionally absent mother, and they liken the environments into which many children are brought up in by these types of moms, and they compared it to the trauma that men experience on the battlefield. And I
Mm,
was,
I can see that.
wow, like
Yeah.
like to make synonymous the broken homes that a lot of this stuff happens in, but it can take place in homes where uh, there is marriage there, but the father takes a back seat to the mother, and she's the power holder, she's the wielder of power
Mhm.
there. Um, that these places are basically like, it's like emotional landmines, and
Mhm.
you know how to move and speak, and you can't even feel.
Mm.
And um, you know, I think that this is something that I've really tried, particularly in this space, to bring attention to, because for me, for my own journey in terms of my own just edification, I was just really trying to figure out, like, man, what's up with these women? Like, what is going on? Like, it's like, what is going on out here? And you start seeing the consistent themes, and so this is a human condition thing. It's
Yeah.
not a racial thing. It's not an ethnic class thing. It's really a human condition thing, and
And it
um,
perpetuates itself, right? Like, so these kids are raised a certain way, they're reading from the script, then they raise their kids a
mm,
specific way, right? So I talk about sometimes, and I'm not going to get into the debate of corporal punishment. I'm just using this as an example that we would have, there was spare the rod, spoil the child.
mm,
Okay. Um, and then we moved into get a switch,
mhm.
get a switch. And if none of you ever been hit by a switch, I'm going to tell you right now, it creates
Whew.
well open sores. It will lacerate your skin.
Mm,
Um, it's a lesser form of a whip. I mean, that's what the switch is. You're being beat with an implement. Um, then we moved into being beat with belts, electrical cords, you know, whatever, shoes, whatever
mm.
implement, right? To swatting, you know, open hand, whatever. So we have, and then you will have people say, you talk like your mom never beat you, and it shows. They'll be
Mm.
like, no, children should be beat. Or they'll say, my mother beat me and I turned out fine. And you're kind of going,
Okay.
or because your parents beat you, then you are going to beat your kids. Now, the caveat to that is there are some there's some interplay there throughout our history that always has to be taken into consideration. But the reason I use this as an example is because in what other circumstance could someone who weighs 200 more pounds than you and is approximately 4 foot taller than you get to beat you up simply because you didn't do what they told you to do? right? Like, so you go to a place, there's somebody 4 foot taller than you and weighs 200 more pounds than you, and they tell you, sit down over here, and you're like, no, I don't want to sit there, and they get to beat you with a stick.
Hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why I use as an example. Again, I don't want to get into the debate on whether corporal punishment is appropriate or not. I think we as humans a little bit instinctually will reach out to smack when where safety is concerned. So there's an argument for it contextually, but that's the example that I like to use, is that we continuously read from the same script because we don't know how to do it different. Everybody we saw, everything we experienced, everything we ever did said this is how you do it. And so even the unhealthy stuff is going to be perpetuated, right? Like if my great grandma left her husband and my grandma left her husband and my mom left her husband, what do we think is going to happen with my husband?
I literally had a female I dealt with years ago who literally celebrated her grandmother leaving her grandfather. Like literally celebrated.
Right.
It was like it
Right.
was.
Like nowadays they have divorce parties. It used to
Mhm.
be you were sad. My relationship failed. My marriage failed. It did not work. This was supposed to be forever. Now it's divorce parties and let's go on the girls' trip. But I do want to say, Leon said, mothering is an interesting subject. When this system separates women from their family, the ability to mother decreases. Yeah, like we lose the skills. And I have said for a very long time, and this is particular to the United States. I don't know about elsewhere, but particular for the United States, there was a long period of time where, and when I say long, I'm talking hundreds of years, where um, Black women were raising white women's children, right? So they were during the times of enslavement, you would have Black women who were in the house. They were nursing the babies to the detriment of their own babies. They were teaching them. They were caring for them. They were the nanny, right? They were caring for the children so the white women could just go do whatever they want. And so this goes on for hundreds of years, right? Then after the Emancipation Proclamation, I'm going to say it that way because I have my own views on whether slavery was ever abolished. But then when Black women needed jobs or were told by law they have to work for white people,
Yes.
they would be in the house, right? Like house cleaning, raising the kids, nursing the babies, doing all of the same things for a menial wage. Okay. Because now you have to pay, right? I have long said somebody needs to study the relationship between white women, and obviously not all. So don't come at me in the comments because, you have to be able to afford all this help in the house to raise your kids. So it's not all. But what is the relationship between white women not raising their own children, and now we look at generations who have raised children young people who are involved at the height of mass shootings. Okay. The vast majority, 99.9% of mass shooters are young white men. So to me, there is a study, there should be a study there about the relationship of losing the skill and ability to raise your children, right? Because
Hmm.
we're looking at this, 73 for civil rights, the 70s, okay, 73, 74, where Black women were not in the homes as much caring for the white women's children, right? Like now, now we got to do it, right? So those children born at that time are now 50. It is 50-ish. It is their children, right? Who are around during this high incidence of mass shooting and school shootings. So to me, there may be a relationship with who has been parenting and and of course now we have to have two-parent households and all this, so they're not there that much anyway, but have we lost our skills and ability to parent in the most appropriate way? Now, I'm just saying somebody needs to study it. I'm not saying one causes the other, but that's what I thought of when Leanne was talking about that, about kind of losing our ability to be able to parent appropriately, because we're not only are we reading from the script, but there are people who were absolved from parenting at all.
Well, I would say in this modern time, what would be considered mothering? Because if the average woman told women that she didn't want to go to school, she didn't want to get a degree, she just wants to be a homemaker, she would be vilified. She would typically be vilified. She would get more praise from men than she would actually get from women. So,
The
uh,
women would try to instill a anxious attachment into her.
yes,
That's what women would do. Like, a man's going to leave you. You got to have a backup plan. Like, you need to get your degree first and get your career underway and have money under your belt, because he's going to divorce you. He's going to leave you for the younger, hotter version. He's going to, they would try to
absolutely.
instill anxiety instead of, if that's what a woman wants to do, a young lady, if that's what she wants to do, then the next statement out of her parents should be, okay, let's work on how to choose the right man. How do you
That's
choose a good husband? How do you move in that way? What are the qualities that you need to be looking for? Those kind of things, not, oh, he's going to screw you over.
well. I think that's why I said, what's the definition of mothering? Because um, typically a mother was considered somebody that was like a homemaker. So, and this is not to poo-poo like women who just you have to work to you know to survive you know
Mhm.
by force, you know but by necessity. But then, like I said, if the average woman said she wanted to be a homemaker, she would be actually shouted down. So,
Mhm.
so now what you have is uh, mothering by proxy. So I'm a mother because I paid the bills. And so now your understanding of being a mother is based on traditionally what will be considered in a man like a provider. So
Mhm.
there, and it doesn't mean that, again, you can't work and you can't, because families have to do what they have to do.
Right.
But if your identity is based in the fact that you're a good mother because you provide, but there is nothing that is spoken to in terms of the nurturing side of things.
Mhm.
Um, well, before I go to work, I wake up, 30 minutes early because I make breakfast for the children so they'll have some food.
Mhm.
That's still an aspect of the mothering because there's that nurturing there. But
Mhm.
you know, you wake up in the morning, you get food at McDonald's. Um, Kids come home from school, mom is not there. That is something that historically is foreign. That's just a foreign concept. So now all of that time is a lot of time of nurturing that is missed. So are you really, in the grand scheme of things, are you a mother? That's really hard to say.
I think when we look at like from a biological perspective, and I know what it is you were saying, but I wanna tweak it just a little bit if it's and then you'll tell me if that's okay after I say this. I don't necessarily I want to change the word nurturing to empathy. Okay? Because in parenting styles, what mothers tend to do is when their child brings them a problem, they respond to the problem with empathy. They're understanding, they're sympathetic, they comfort, they do all these things. They address the problem with empathy. When a child brings a problem to a father, he addresses the problem with problem solving. What have you tried? What have you done? What was your role in it? How could you do things differently? Like, let's learn a lesson. You know what I mean? Let's solve problems so that you know how to solve problems in the future. It's a protection mechanism, right? Like, I'm going to teach you how to solve the problem so you can solve the problem later. Whereas mom's response is, I understand why you feel that way. It's totally appropriate for you to feel that way, and it's okay for you to be pissed off. And so she validates, he is teaching, for out of protection, those kind of things. The reason why I want to switch nurturing to empathy is because men are just as nurturing to their children as women. So men will instinctually give physical affection. They will cuddle their children, hug their children, love on their children, be in close proximity, comfort them when they're harmed. And it's just done instinctually. They that nurturing piece um, comes out of bonding and attachment, and because children bond and attach to both parents in this situation, then men also have that instinct to be very nurturing. Think about it this way: if your child comes to you and says, I want to play baseball, then you will nurture that in them also, right? Like, being supportive is also being nurturing. Okay, let's go try to hit some balls. Let's see if we can find a league. Let's get you a mitt. And so they will also nurture and support in that way.
Well, wh- I like to take this, and this is not, because I'm using the wisdom of it. So this is not for people who, I don't care what your religion is. I'm just taking the wisdom from it. But um, in the Bible, in Proverbs 31, it talks about. I love this part of the Bible because it is a it is a queen talking to her son who is the king, and she's telling her son what kind of woman you should look at in terms of a wife.
Mhm.
And because he talks about how certain types of women can be the downfall of kings. So on the
Mhm.
one hand, she's the queen, telling her son who's a king what kind of queen you need to ultimately have. And at the same time, she's giving information to women on what kind of woman you need to be for your husband, because ultimately your husband is going to be your king.
Mhm.
So one of the things that is in Proverbs 31 is the notion of service on the woman's part. And it
Mhm.
talks about how the woman, through um, her, um, her, for lack of a better word, volunteering in the community, and how that actually brings prestige back to the family
Mhm.
and reflects reflects very well on the king, on her husband and her family overall. And one of the things that I've said, because I've done volunteer work before, I've done volunteer work. Um, uh, I volunteered with persons with disabilities for 2 years. It was one of the best experiences I ever had,
Mhm.
because I saw people with really traumatic brain injuries, people with spinal cord injuries where they were paralyzed from the waist down, people with MS. And what I saw were people who were still fighting and trying to make things happen in their lives. It's
Mhm.
very inspirational.
Mhm.
And it made me have a different perspective. So when I started seeing people who had all their bearings, I would take less excuses from people because of that experience.
Okay, we are hitting the 2-hour mark. I appreciate you, Rael. In the private chat, I put my email address. I didn't realize that I took it down. So you will have that. You are more than welcome to come back again. This has been super informative and very appreciative to you for sharing from your books, sharing from your knowledge. And I think that's great. So I totally appreciate you being here. I
Problem.
appreciate everybody who hung for the second hour. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Just overall, thanks for having me up. Just to cap it off, I think that kind of experience for people overall is good, men and women. But for women, I think it can waken up that nurturing aspect.
Mhm.
There being where you are of service to someone else, where it's not you're getting something in return from a transactional perspective. It can actually waken that latent femininity that I think a lot of women would truly, really benefit from if they
Yeah.
actually participated in something like that, like soup kitchens and things of that sort.
Mhm.
It will really
That's
awaken
a
them.
good idea. That's actually a good idea and something simple to do, right? Like as families, you can even go do that.
Absolutely.
All right. So hopefully I'll see people Wednesday for Shadow Work Wednesday. If not, I will see you guys next Sunday for Unf Yourself, talking about self-sabotage. Hope everybody has a great rest of your Sunday. Thank you again to Rael and everybody who hung for the second hour. See ya.